It's summertime, which means it's the perfect weather to set up a painting studio in the shed. What you are about to watch is the inner workings of shed studio life. All the paintings I painted, and probably more importantly, everything about how I thought through and made artistic decisions during my first couple weeks in the new abode. You guys, I really want to set up in here, but I'm forcing myself to send this email first. It was a very scary email. It was to a gallery. I wanted to get on their radar to potentially show some of my paintings with them. And I had been putting off reaching out because, well, just with cold, unsolicited messages like these, you never really know if the gallery is going to give you the time of day or not. But I still tried. I super briefly gave some background on myself, a few highlights of the CV, articulated why specifically I connected with their gallery as opposed to any other, and of course included my portfolio. I had someone ask once how to make a portfolio, and this was literally just a PDF document with around 10 images, one big picture per page, high quality, straight on, perfectly focused, no glare shots of available paintings of mine, with the title, dimension, year, medium listed out beneath each one. Super just clean, professional, and simple. I definitely tried to convey an extremely elevated sense of professionalism, tried to embody someone who is not about to set up shop in a shed filled with lawn games. Hopefully they didn't see right through me. Now, we certainly did not decide to become painters because we just love writing emails and selling ourselves. No! I think most of us decided to pursue this because we love to make stuff. So I started working with this gorgeous slab of walnut. I wanted to make a painting on it, so I sanded, filled this one hole, set it aside so the putty could cure, and grabbed these stretcher bars only to find that the only piece of canvas I had was just a few inches too small to actually fit over them. Oh, that's annoying. I cried about it and then had the genius idea of cutting a canvas off of another set of slightly larger stretcher bars and re-stretching it over the initial ones. Yes, I could have avoided cutting it off and re-stretching if I had just painted over the larger bars, but it was crucial for the image I had in mind to have this slightly narrower rectangular aspect ratio of these specific bars. Now, you may be wondering, what is this image you have in mind? What are you even going to be painting? When is the painting gonna happen? It's gonna happen. I came into this shed planning on painting a large collection, a forest, if you will, of trees. Specifically one tree, over and over and over and over again. If you saw my last video, you'll know that I had been on a climbing trip in Turkey. It was majestic, and I was so pleased to see in the comments that so many of you guys were just as awestruck by the scenery as I had been. But you guys, that mountain wasn't even the best part. The best, most majestic part was this one skinny ass little red tree. The tree. Finally approaching the tree.
Look at this beauty. Look at the color.
That is awesome. Whoa. Oh my gosh.
Insane.
This is my favorite thing I've seen.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. I'm gonna spare you the details on why exactly I was so obsessed with this tree, only because I'm making a whole other video solely dedicated to it and will not be sparing any details then. But for now, just know that all I'm wanting is to paint this one tree in 1,000,001 different ways. Is that what I actually ended up doing? No, not really. But this desire was my starting point for everything that is about to come, and is why I was gravitating really exclusively towards these more elongated rectangles that I thought that tree would nestle nicely into. So just start to imagine how those branches are going to look on this piece of walnut. Like, come on. The putty was cured, by the way, so I did a coat of clear gesso to prep it for paint. I wanted the clear rather than a white because I didn't want to completely lose the grain. I knew I would want some of it to show through in the final painting. It dried beautifully overnight, so I did a second coat the next morning, set that to dry, and then I'm ironing this crease out from the restretched canvas and am about to grab the third and final surface I prepped before starting to actually paint. This third surface was an old unfinished painting. I fully intended on finishing it eventually. I had loved starting this painting so much, but you guys, I was way more excited about my tree at this point, and this canvas was literally the perfect elongated rectangle. It was the perfect size for my tree, so I was very okay with the idea of sacrificing the old image and painting something new right over on top. You'll see I'm not doing any gesso over the old painting. I'm just gonna go straight on top with my tree. However, I did have to gesso the edges because I had not done that before. And making space to get painting, you guys. We are getting so close to actually starting. There's always just way too much to do before the actual painting can start. I really hope I can have a studio assistant one day. That would be such a dream. Have someone who can do like the surface preparations for me and maybe like email the galleries and organize my space for me too. Oh, that would be nice. That is a good reason to work hard. Okay, but what was I saying? Oh yes, we're in the home stretch. Got the bad boy on up there. One final touch up of the edges. And I'm also finishing the backside and the edges of the walnut piece. I did not put this finish on the side that I was going to be painting. That just had the clear gesso, but I wanted the edges and the back to look really nice and polished. A big $20 sheet of glass from Lowe's is the best palette you will ever find. Got that down, got my paint laid out, and we were ready to go. Okay, things are getting organized and ready to go in here. I think it actually looks pretty good. Let me show. Got this top shelf and beam situation. Bam, bam, mediums, charcoal, miscellaneous, more mediums. Then we've got, you know, our plastic baseball bats and croquet set. Very integral parts of the studio. And then we have this beautiful shelf. I put all of the tubes like this that are like almost completely out towards the front so that hopefully I would be more tempted to grab those rather than going for the nice big full ones. And then over here, we have these two surfaces which are prepped and ready to go. Easel, hooks for my things, collection of old horseshoes. Then we've got the tool bucket, brush bucket, this guy, and of course, the best part, my big glass palette. There are a lot of things I don't care about when it comes to a studio space. I don't care if there's a collection of sleds hanging from the roof, but as long as I have space for this, we're good. Really depends, but sometimes when I'm starting out, I like to just give myself a very simple big grid. Seeing a visual of exactly where the center point is, that's especially helpful for me as I am about to start figuring out where I want everything to go. I can place everything in relationship to that one spot, and that's like, makes my life so much easier. And with that, I started with my charcoal. I have started a lot of paintings in my life, and as a result, I have a pretty set in stone order of operations that I go through every single time. Now, I typically draw a little bit with charcoal. I keep it super minimal. What you're about to see me do is actually way more than I would normally draw. I would normally stop and start painting right about now. And then you've probably heard the term killing the white of the canvas. I do that. Killing the white of the canvas, this means that you are covering the entire canvas as quickly as possible with large areas of simplified, normally thin washes of color. I'll put some examples of what this looks like for me on the screen. And I do think this is such a solid way to start a painting. It makes painting easier in a lot of ways, just in how it forces you out of this state of being overly precious with a pristine surface. And it makes it way easier for you to accurately judge your color relationships if you're developing them all together rather than focusing on one small section or one individual color at a time. And so, you know, for the majority of the past 15 years that I've been painting, I normally go through this exact same process every single time, and because it's so natural to me and I've done it so many times, it happens just very, very quickly. For a canvas this size, maybe 30 minutes would be my average to do my first extremely loose, extremely generalized layer over everything. But this time, I was thinking I might want something different. Okay, I need to vocalize what I'm thinking because I think it will actually help me follow through with what I'm thinking. I'm trying to convince myself to proceed slowly. Especially at the beginning of a painting, I tend to go very, very fast. I just use the charcoal to get like a very general idea of where everything is going to go and then go right in with paint to cover everything as quickly as possible, which I love. I love working fast. I love covering a lot of ground quickly. However, I've been noticing recently that going fast kind of forces me into like an autopilot mode, which is not really a mode I want to be in. Being in autopilot means I'm not really considering if the way I'm doing things is the way I actually want to be doing things, or if it's just a result of me like not being able to escape the thralls of all the habits I have and all of the routines that are very deeply ingrained in me that I've built up over the past 15 years of my life that I've been painting. I've been trying to remind myself recently to not assume that I know the best way to do things, to not assume that the way I've always done things is the way I should actually be doing things yet again. Like, I don't want to approach this painting assuming that I know exactly what I'm doing with it, or assuming that I should treat it the same way I've treated every other painting. I want to come to it fresher, treat it as its own unique, important thing, which it is. So yeah, autopilot, not today, buddy. I will say though, avoiding your own habits is not that is not an easy thing to do. I actually don't really know how to do that. I guess I'm attempting it by telling myself to slow down. I want to give myself a second to think. Actually, no, not think. I want to give myself a second to look. Thinking and looking are two very different things. Thinking about painting is not so helpful. Looking, that is much more helpful. Okay, I'll give myself a second to look. So I set my camera up to look at me while I pretended to look at my tree. Hopefully I really sold it. Hopefully I look like I'm really looking at my canvas really hard, rather than being preoccupied with wondering about how the camera that I had pointed at me was perceiving me. And that's when I had to turn the camera off. I had a proper camera-less 30-minute-ish look at the tree, and then I came right back. I did end up continuing with a slower pace, and I pushed the charcoal drawing much further than I normally would. I kept with it for a couple hours total, which is really unheard of for me, and I ended up loving it. Charcoal is such a fun material because it's so easy to correct yourself. It's so easy to smudge, push back, brush out marks that aren't working, and to just continually be making new ones until everything feels settled in place. Nothing better than a brand new brush. And finally starting with the paint now. I definitely still had in mind continuing slowly, not rushing, and I wanted to be thinking too about ways to allow the charcoal to be a part of the final piece rather than just covering it all up with paint like I often normally would. Okay, this is where we are right now. I love how charcoal can do stuff like this. I think I might force myself to stop on it for today. I really like it. I think going slow is going in my favor. I might force myself to really slow down and like actually stop on it completely for today. Come back to it tomorrow. Which if I do that, I could start something new. I obviously have this guy. Really most excited for this one. I think the black charcoal on the brown is just gonna look awesome. Also, I could probably also use white. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm gonna have a lot of fun drawing on this. Maybe this should just be a drawing actually. Maybe I shouldn't paint on this at all. The only thing though is that I'm kind of regretting the fact that all of these are pretty big. I wish I had some surfaces that were a little smaller. Amazing news. One, I remembered I do in fact have a small surface. Bam. Perfect. Two, look at this. This has been chilling there for who knows how many years. It's a little dusty and musty, but if I gessoed this up, this would be an incredible painting surface. This is the beauty of found materials. Coat one. While that dries. If you are a part of a traditional painting community, you might be surrounded by some people who violently oppose the idea of using photographic references to paint from, aka exactly what I'm doing right now. Maybe your art teacher is always encouraging you to work from life more, to ditch the photos, and you're like, but why? Photos are way more convenient. And yeah, they are more convenient, but I hate to break it to you, the traditional painting community really has a point. Working exclusively from photographic references can really limit us. And I'm talking about it now because while I'm obviously not a working from life purist, I was really feeling the limitations of the photo with this little sucker of a painting. I'll explain. Photos flatten things, both literally spatially from 3 dimensions to 2 dimensions. They simplify the space down for us, and photos tend to flatten colors. They take away a lot of the subtleties of color shifts that our eyes are so good at seeing. So they just end up giving you a lot less information to contend with, to pull from, as compared to when you are standing in front of something real. For me, it really depends. I do work from photos a lot, and I don't always feel palpably limited by them. Sometimes it's even nice to have a simplified or distorted reference even. Like, I hadn't really been feeling limitations at all with my larger tree painting, for example. Those photos I felt like were serving me and the painting just fine. But something about this little one was really making me wish that I was working on it from life rather than from my computer screen. Especially because, well, so much of what made that tree so amazing for me was the actual standing in front of it, you know, the actual being there with it. And while I think it's totally possible for photos and paintings to possess some of the same excitement and magic that comes from the actual experience of being with a beautiful thing, I was not feeling it here. Maybe it was the photo. I almost feel like I chose too good of a photo, like where there was no point in trying to make it a painting. Like, it just was a better photo than it could ever have been a painting.
Coat 2.
Or maybe it was just how I was painting it. Maybe it was the fact that I was just referencing one photo, whereas for my other tree painting, I was referencing a whole album of photos. Whatever it wasn't really working for me. And I was just really wanting to look at something real. So the next day, that's exactly what I did. I put my trees on pause and got another little still life side project going. I wanted the stars of the still life to be these insane dried seed pods. You might recognize them from an earlier video. I literally think this is the coolest thing ever. I think they are such unique forms. They are so structured but also organic and feel very sensitive in how they're twisted. They just feel very alive to me. I had done this tiny little painting study, one of them, in that other video, but it did very little to satisfy my urge to look at them. So I was very excited to have an excuse to do something more substantial with them now.
Maybe that.
I want everything to be a little bit larger than life size, I think. So, okay, this would be life size. Kind of want it to be like that. This process of painting these organic matter still lifes has been a big part of what I've done for the past few years. I started painting a lot of this kind of stuff when I was in grad school. I had previously been doing a lot of portraiture, a lot of more figurative work, and switching subjects, I felt like it freed me up in a big way. It made me feel like I could be a little more playful with things rather than focusing so much on a very narrow goal of achieving someone's perfect likeness. By playful, I don't mean mindless, I don't mean unstudied, I more mean being open to experimentation, to wonder, to things going in a direction other than that which was planned, or even being open to inviting little moments of chaos or disorder into the order, into the rules of traditional painting. If any of that sounds interesting, by the way, there is going to be a workshop in France the last weekend of August. We are going to be making and painting from these kinds of still lifes filled with all these little organic objects, playing, embracing the chaos and order that is making a painting. If you are interested in joining us, please do send me an email and I will get back to you with all the good information. I'm like actually obsessed. Guess what? I bought a plane ticket this morning. Workshop in France the last weekend of August, and I just finalized my plane itinerary for that. I'm so excited. There's gonna be a lot of cool stuff happening this fall. Do y'all see this? The other day when I brought this out, it was in such a tight curl, remember? And now it's like flattening out. Yeah, so I've had these for well over a year. I found them in southern Mexico and brought them home with me. But yeah, this is the first time I'm seeing them so untwisted. I guess I've been keeping them inside, and maybe now that I have them in the shed and it's not temperature controlled, maybe that's making them move about. If any scientifically inclined person can explain that to me, please do. Okay, new segment. Let's talk about traveling with oil paints. I've seen this question pop up in the comments before, and I've done it a fair bit, so let me share what I know. Can you bring oil paints on a plane? Yes, absolutely. Just follow the normal rules for liquids and you will be fine. No sweat. That being said, I get why people sweat about it, why people ask about it a lot, because I also get very nervous about it. The last time I flew with oil paints, I had 3 gallon-sized Ziploc bags completely filled with tubes, and I was shaking in my boots, nervous out of my mind that they would get thrown out. For some reason, oil paints feel like they would be a hazardous substance, and there have been stories of luggage agent people tossing them out before. So I think, yeah, the question is, why has that happened and how do we avoid that happening to us? Basically, the big thing to know is that airlines don't allow flammable liquids. Oil paints are not flammable, at least not any I've run into, so they are perfectly allowed. However, a lot of other kinds of paints are flammable, so it's basically possible to run into a situation in which whatever luggage lord or lady sees your tubes, maybe they don't totally know what they're looking at, and they might make the assumption that they might be flammable and decide to toss them just to be safe. Fair enough, but we don't want this to happen to us, obviously, and there are things we can do to make sure it doesn't happen. First thing to do is never ever ever refer to your tubes of oil paint as paint. Because so many paints are flammable, the word paint is very much a red flag word, so when you enter that airport, you are no longer a painter. You are an artist who works with oil-based pigments or oil-based colors. Actually, fun fact, if you grab any of your tubes of paint right now, I can almost guarantee you that the word paint does not show up on those tubes once. Let me show you. You see this? Oil color. Look at this one. Oh yeah, artist oil color. Another one, oil color. There's the word pigment on the back. Paint appears nowhere. So yeah, just if you have small tubes in your liquids bag and your carry-on and a TSA agent asks you about them, you can just say what it says on the tube. Say, oh, these are my professional artist oil-based pigment. And for larger tubes in your checked bag, I would just write a note saying kind of the same thing. Like, these are professional, non-flammable artist oil-based colors. Something like that. Just don't call them paint. Also, just interrupting real quick, the wind was making the still life very much not a still life. The wind is not cooperating. So I went back to my square. This was the last day I ever worked on it. It met an unfortunate, or fortunate, depending on how you look at it, demise that you will see later. I kept getting distracted by chess, and that is when you really know that I am bored and done. Okay. Where was I? Second thing to do to make sure your oil colors aren't wrongfully tossed. Print out their MSDS sheets. You can normally find these on the product page online. Print it and highlight the area that has the flash point. This is what is going to prove to whomever that your art supplies aren't flammable and aren't going to be spontaneously combusting in the luggage department. I would attach the sheet to the little note that you wrote and just put it with the tubes in a very visible place. Also, mediums are a slightly different story. There are a lot of mediums that are very flammable, so they would obviously not be allowed. If you want to bring mediums, just really double check the flash points. Make sure to have the MSDS sheets, or you can always just, buy new mediums at whatever place you're going. That's actually what I've always opted to do. That's good, right? It has to be. Like, my queen is way too in his zone for that to not be good for me. There's no way he can capture me. Maybe I'll retire from painting. I completely lost that game. This was the next day. It was much less windy now, so I reset up the still life. Originally, I was just going to reset it up the exact same way it had been before, but I got a little carried away. My favorite addition was that old little block painting that I put in the background. I was also really happy to have the spiral seed pod more in the front. they hadn't been centered enough in the original setup. Oh, and the spiral, it went back right the next day. It was flat for just that one day and then curled back up. And I did want to say that this was the last painting session I recorded before taking a break from recording for a few days. The next clip you are going to see is me explaining this color mixing crisis I had during that 3-day break. I'm prefacing this because I apologize for being so dramatic. Looking back at this footage, I don't really think I was having that much of a crisis, but in the moment, it did really feel like I was doing everything completely wrong. So I'm just warning you. It is definitely over dramatic, but it did result in me doing the best color mixing exercise I've ever done in my life, which I think will be really helpful to share. Here we go. Don't look at that yet. That actually kind of helped me solve my crisis, but we'll get to it. Let me explain what happened. Basically, I feel like I've been struggling a lot with color mixing. This is kind of a common feeling for me. Like I don't feel like color is my strongest element. I think a lot of my most successful paintings, they have relied more heavily on drawing, composition, texture, like surface quality, and even tonalism, like of the values, the play of lights and darks across the canvas. I don't know, I tend to emphasize and rely on all of those elements much more than I rely on excellent color use. I was getting particularly frustrated about it with the little square and with this still life. Yeah, I feel like a lot of the colors are clownish in a way. I don't feel I've been very sensitive to what I've been observing. Yes, all the colors are based in my observations, are based in reality, but something's missing. And that's one of the difficult things about painting is it's kind of hard to tell what's missing sometimes. So I had this realization, and then I did the absolute worst thing in the world anyone could ever possibly do when they feel bad about their color usage. And I spent a couple hours just staring at Susan Lickman's paintings. Oh my gosh, what a rookie mistake of mine. I know better than that. I know not to do that. Anyways, I did it. It made me feel absolutely terrible about myself. It made me feel terrible about myself, but then it also, gave me a swift kick in the butt. I don't really want to make paintings like her. Like, I like my colors being a little bit more based in my immediate observations than hers are, but what I get so jealous about is how she has such a sophisticated sense of color where she is able to create these scenes that are using pretty outlandish, unrealistic colors, but they still make sense. All the color relationships that she's creating on the canvas, all of those work so perfectly where the painting as its own thing just sings and has its own internal logic. There's so much internal logic to these paintings. Anyways, I'm over here and looking at my paintings after looking at her paintings and being like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm doing. I felt like I was trying to do the easier thing. All I was trying to do was copy the colors I was seeing, be a color matching robot, whereas she is inventing worlds of color with their own internal logic. That is so much harder to do successfully, or at least a lot less straightforward. So I was trying to do the simpler thing, yet felt like I couldn't even do it well. So I took that feeling and made myself do this exercise, which low-key was, I think, the best color mixing I've done in a very long time. Basically, I set up a new still life, this guy, and gave myself 6 different reds. This is the part of the palette I was using. Ignore those colors, I was not touching those. 6 different reds ranging from cooler, more violet-y reds to warmer, more orangey reds. I also gave myself a yellow-green that I could use to neutralize the reds with, and white. But no blue, no blacks, and no yellow. The goal of the exercise was to use this very limited slice of the color wheel to create a full world of colors with. I was partly inspired to do this because I was noticing in a lot of Susan Lickman's paintings, she has a very compressed color world. My way of mimicking that was to literally limit the colors I had available to me on my palette, but mostly it wasn't so much about mimicking her, but really I just wanted to force myself out of my norm. I wanted to be forced to think about color in a very different way, and oh boy, this was effective. First big interesting thing was the yellow on the peach. Obviously with the palette I had given myself, I couldn't actually mix that intense of a yellow, so the goal shifted from mix a perfect match for this color, which would normally be my goal, to mix a color that reads as close to yellow as possible within the world of the painting itself. Mix a color that complies with the internal logic of the painting. A color that, in relationship to everything else around it, describes that part of the peach effectively. It's just a really interesting little mindset shift. Another tricky area were the really intense blues. Obviously, again, I can't actually achieve that kind of blue with this palette. So instead of trying to mix a dark blue, I had to focus on mixing a dark color that was just cooler than everything else in the painting. I kid you not, this is the most helpful thing I think I've ever done. The way it forced me to have laser eyes, the way it forced me to be so discerning with everything I was doing was, incredible. And to be frank, I think it really made me realize that a lot of times I am not that discerning with the colors that I'm mixing. Normally I have the exact same palette out every time I work. I normally do a warm and cool of each primary, white, black, maybe brown. I have a muscle memory of how I normally mix colors, but I couldn't rely on that at all because my palette was totally different than normal. So I just really it forced me to just take a lot more time, be way more intentional with each color I was mixing. I was not on autopilot once during this painting, that's for sure. I feel like I just unlocked something new, which is honestly such a good feeling. So I'm actually very happy, and I'm very happy to take what this guy showed me and apply it to the other paintings in here. I think for this still life painting, I think I'm gonna do something similar and give myself a limited palette to work with. I'm not gonna go as limited as just the reds and the green, but maybe I'll figure something out and I'll show you guys the palette I ended up working with. And then I think this guy's too far gone. I think this guy might just need a hard reset. I took all my reds off. It was a hard left. I took a curveball throw. Is that a phrase? I'm not really a baseball person. The palette I landed on for this painting was the opposite of my last one, is what I'm saying. No true reds. My closest thing to red I had was cadmium orange and burnt sienna, but I had basically everything else apart from red out, including lots of colors I almost never touch. The goal here wasn't to limit myself as much as I had in the little exercise. It was more to just make another big set of changes to my palette so that I would be forced once again to really not rely on muscle memory. Activate laser eyes, avoid autopilot, and I don't know if it's a noticeable difference, but at least internally, I definitely felt a big difference, like I was being much more sensitive, much more intentional with all of my mixtures. Also, not having true reds did make the red areas, particularly the red of the Coke box in the back, a bit more toned down, a bit more closely related to everything else, which I do think helped the color relationships feel a bit more natural. Oh, and I moved to the garage, if you couldn't tell. Temporary. Back to my tree, finally. I still have every intention of painting this tree a million more times, like I said I was planning on doing back at the, oh my gosh, over 30 minutes ago at the beginning of this video. I still have the walnut piece and the other skinny canvas to use, so the forest will be growing. I just clearly get distracted with other things sometimes. Okay, this video is not about this painting, but I need to talk about it. I made this painting a while ago in another video of mine. I have basically not looked at this painting since I edited that video, and I just randomly today, I started another painting of a dining room, which is not included in this video, but it will be included in a future video. So my mind was on dining rooms, right? And I was like, I wonder whatever happened to that other dining room painting I made a while ago. I was inspired to pull it out and take a look. I have never been so happy in my life. I think this is the best painting I've ever made. I'm kind of jealous of the version of myself from a year ago that did this. Kind of hilarious if you watch the video that this painting is from. Pretty sure I go on a whole spiel about how insecure I am about this painting. Now I'm thinking I don't know what was wrong with me, because I'm looking in the viewfinder because I'm just looking at the painting. Clearly my feelings have changed. which is good to remember that that can happen, because there have definitely been points during all of these paintings that I've been doing in this video where I have had those feelings of like, wow, this is the worst thing I've ever done. But you know, maybe that's not actually true. Maybe I just need a few months, a little distance. Little distance is good. Now I'm thinking maybe I shouldn't have painted over this. Maybe this little tree was my masterpiece that a year from now I was gonna look at and be like, oh my gosh, that's the most incredible thing I ever did. I don't think that's the case. And even if it was the case, who cares? I would really love to sell this painting. I would love for it to be hanging on someone's nice wall rather than it being seen like with a cluttered garage in the background. The problem is, for shipping this large of a painting, the best way to do it would be to build a crate and ship it in the crate. However, I don't have a wood shop available to me at the moment, and getting someone else to build it would be, I mean, shipping would just be like almost the same price as the painting. If anyone lives, let's say driving distance from like eastern to central Massachusetts, and you're in love with this painting, I realize I'm talking to like 2 people right now, but if you are one of those 2 people, you live within driving distance of me and you have disposable income. Okay, maybe the 2 people I was talking to just got knocked down to 1 person. If you are that 1 person, email me, okay? I would love to figure out a way to get this to you. Back to my tree. I lied. This video is already way too long. Stay tuned for more about the trees and also for all the other paintings that are gonna distract me from the trees. And stay tuned because I'm gonna make a Q&A video, so if you have any questions you would like me to answer,